face-off. Shoots it, deflected, right in. Pietrangelo save, rebound. Stastny stopped by Pietrangelo. I don't believe that save. Neither does Peter Stastny. He can't believe the save that Pietrangelo just made on him as Frankie sparkling on that maneuver there to stop and rob Peter Stastny. Should get 5 to 10 for that.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Tendy Talk. I am your host Joe, better known as Washed Up Goalie on social media. This week was an exciting one for me as I chat with the person simply known as Goalie Gear Nerd. Goalie Gear Nerd likes to keep his anonymity, so if you're watching the video of the discussion, you'll be disappointed to find out he did not turn on his camera. Before I talk to Goalie Gear Nerd though, let's take a short break. Goalie Gear Nerd, thanks for joining me here. It's a pleasure to talk to you. We've done some conversing back and forth on social media, so it's nice to actually talk to you. Thank you.
Likewise, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, when I first started the podcast, I knew you were somebody I wanted to get on, and I'm glad you see the value in it. So, people know you for knowing the ins and outs of everything goalie equipment related. When somebody's got a new strapping setup or a new mask or anything like that, they come to you. But I want to dig into some of the other parts of you and find out, what about you? How did you get into hockey? If I'm not mistaken, you're from the Missouri area, probably St. Louis area. How does a guy like you get into hockey back when we were kids?
Yeah, it's funny. My mom actually was a big sports nut, and my grandfather, her father, was one of a cameraman for CBS.
Oh, cool.
So when St. Louis got the rights for the Blues, he was one of the cameramen, and so he brought my mom at a very young age to the St. Louis Arena, he having previously not known anything about hockey, and said, "You got to check this out. This sport is really cool. It's fast," and that hooked her. So fast forward, and my mom was a big sports cards collector, baseball cards and hockey cards specifically, and I remember very distinctly looking through her cards and seeing a picture. I posted before. It was a pro set card of Kirk McLean in his Vaughn pads and Hespeler stick, I think, and Greg Harrison mask. And I saw that, and I was like, I don't know what this is or who this guy is, but this looks awesome. And I just immediately became incredibly fascinated with hockey and goalies specifically, and kind of the journey started from there. And gosh, I was 7-ish, so yeah, it was I was off the races.
So that's kind of how you discovered the game. Did you start playing at an early age, or have you just been a fan and never stepped on the ice?
Oh yeah, no, I started playing almost immediately.
Okay.
And what started as you do at that age, they made me play forward, and they let me play goalie every other game, and I was a pretty good forward. I averaged over a goal a game. I was pretty darn good. I was pretty fast and a pretty decent shot. And I was a terrible goalie, horrible, probably one of the worst in the league. And the end of the season, I looked at my parents and I said, I don't want to play forward anymore. I just want to be a goalie. And they thought I was nuts. And so,
which is part of being a goalie.
Precisely right. Yes, exactly. It was very on brand. So my parents kind of shrugged and said, okay, fine. And then that was it. And then kind of played, pretty competitively all through, my younger years. And that's how I got to know people like Mike McKenna, another St. Louis guy who actually obviously had tremendously longer and more distinguished playing career than myself. But I've known Mike from those very early days, and, kind of kept around and played really competitively till my later teenage years, and then started getting more into, not realizing I wasn't going to the show, started kind of getting into hockey, the retail side of things, and started getting involved in that world, and then kind of continue to play. I still play to this day, a couple nights a week, but also then that was kind of my beginning of getting onto the gear side of things and understanding that world and the niche world that is goalie gear.
So if I'm hearing you correct, it was kind of the equipment that drew you to the position, but you didn't start geeking out over it until, the high school years when you maybe started working in retail and really understanding how it was made and the differences between the products. Is that accurate?
Oh, yes and no. I mean, I think that I was a big gear nerd because the name's so appropriate. Very early on, I remember. I don't know how long you've played, but back in the day, the companies like Gunzo's.
Yeah, that's where I got a pair of pads from Gunzo's because I grew up in the Chicago area. So yeah, I've been there.
Okay. So remember, they used to send out like Gunzo's sent out that black and white catalog every year.
Oh, I loved it.
And yeah, and so did I. And so what I would do is I would carry those because this is obviously we're our childhood predated, portable electronic devices. Yeah. So I would have total long 3 or 4 catalogs with me everywhere I went. Mm-hmm. And it would be restaurants, and when my parents were running errands, I would just kind of hunker down with these magazines and just thumb through them over and over and over until they fell apart. And I was really fascinated by the gear side. And then when I went to retail, I kind of realized kind of 2 things very quickly. One, I was the only quote unquote goalie guy there. And it was amazing that, at 16, I was able to talk to goalie parents and customers, and I knew a fair amount. I don't think I really realized how much I knew until I worked there, and the value for that. And I remember very quickly the owners of the store were like, "No, we just want you to stand in the goalie section. That's it." But then, so I realized, wow, I do know a bit about this, but also realizing once you've gotten a little peek behind the curtain, how much you don't know. And really, so that there's that new phase where I got to talk to the reps and got even more immersed in the gear world and kind of understood the business side a bit more. So it was like this big second education I got kind of starting literally at 16. It was my first job. So, which is really cool.
Yeah. You talked about those Gunzos. I loved the few times we got to go up there because I lived on the south side, and at the time they only had the location on the north side. So it was we had to plan out the trip. We'll put it that way. But then the rink I skated at, Southwest Ice Arena, a shop opened up across the street, Hockey Unlimited. And it was run by a father and son, and they were both goalies. So of course they had all kinds of goalie equipment in there. They had and they loved the gear too. Linus would always say, it doesn't matter how good you play, it matters how good you look. And that's where I bought my Pro Mask goalie helmet, and it's one of the few places I've seen them. They used to carry ice gear goalie equipment. I know you've seen some pictures of that. My understanding is it was white labeled, and they were the ones that sold it at Hockey Unlimited. I could be wrong, but that's what he told me.
I think that's right. I can't recall who the maker was, though.
Yeah. And he would carry Glenn Miller pads and all the good stuff. He had it there, and I loved going over there and just seeing it. And then I'd look in my hockey bag and see what I had in there and, hang my head. But it is what it is, but at the same time, as a kid, back then when it snowed, us kids would grab a shovel and earn some money that way. So that's how I bought my equipment. So I bought what I could afford in those days.
Nice.
So your first set, do you remember what that was?
Oh yes, vividly. I still have my first stick. It's a Cooper stick. I got to post that sometime. It's in my garage along with, all the others I've accumulated kind of through the years. I can't bear to throw it away, but this will date me. I set of Cooper gloves, these red, blue, and white gloves. They're pretty cool. I couldn't close the glove to save my life. But the big thing that I was so excited about was my first set of pads, which were a black and white all nylon set of Aeroflexes.
Oh, nice.
And I thought these things are awesome. And I was the only kid that had, we were also using the rental sets.
Yeah.
At the rink. And so I was one of the only kids that had his own set of pads, and I mean the things must have been 15 pounds each.
Yeah, but they were still lighter than the other option.
Absolutely, yeah. And I thought these are so cool. That was my first kind of set, and I was really excited. What about you?
My first set was association equipment. The pads were brown leather pads. I don't even know what brand they were because this was the early 90s, and they were clearly
Sure.
from the late 70s, so the name had worn off by then. In fact, one of the knee rolls was being held together by athletic tape. My first chest protector was a 2-piece from the 70s as well. I had a
wow.
set of Winwell. I had a Winwell waffle board blocker and glove from the 70s I found at Play It Again Sports for like $15.
Nice.
And I mean, that glove was old first baseman's glove style, but hey, it was mine.
Yep.
And my first helmet was a Jofa bucket that was way too big for me. Archisurbe style Jofa with the cage.
Oh, nice.
And, I've recently put a picture on my Instagram feed of how it started and how it's going, and I have the helmet and pads on, but I was borrowing my teammate's gloves because his dad had bought him a brand new pair of Vaughn gloves that weekend that we were playing the tournament in. So he let me use them when I was playing, and we would switch halfway through the game and we'd stop and hand off the gloves. And I had a Titan stick, which I still have because I got Bobby Hall and Sam Makita to sign it. So that's still in my possession. And I remember my first pair of skates were Tour skates. So
Tour. Okay. Oh,
yeah.
wow. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Showing my age.
Yeah, no, it's a great amalgamation of brands. It's funny. I remember my first true goalie mask, because I wore the Cooper bucket for the first couple of years, but I remember I think I was going to start paying Pee Wee, and my parents had kind of agreed, okay, you're going to get a true goalie mask, and we were in a very small retailer. And there was a little business card on the cash register, and it was a mask, and it looked like kind of the Brian Hayward shark design. And I was like, "Oh, this is sick." And I was like, "Dad, I don't know who this is. You got to call them." And they didn't even carry the sorts. It was just a business card. So my dad kind of begrudgingly was like, "All right, fine, I'll call him, talk to this guy." So then my dad came back a couple days later and goes, I talked to that guy. He seems to really know his stuff. And he asked him about the measurements for your head, and he's just kind of getting his business off the ground. And so I'm going to go ahead and order one of these for you. Okay. And I was like, that's awesome. Great. It was Gary Warwick Sr.
Oh my goodness.
Just starting his business still out of his home.
Yeah.
And it was very, very early on, Warwick mask, and I loved it. I got the Stefan Fitze Nordiques Igloo design with the team logo in the middle, and I sadly sold that mask. It's one of the very few items I sold. My parents did, I assume, later on, and it kills me that I don't own that anymore, because it's such a it was such that's a special place in my heart. And a little funny anecdote about the paint job, it was because, again, given our age, the pros could get their masks painted by, Greg Harrison would make the mask and paint it for them. And there were a few mask painters out there, not like there are today. I told my parents, I really want it painted. I think it's going to look so cool if it's painted. So at a mall, as we're getting ready to go to have dinner, my stuff was in the car, and they said, well, there's a t-shirt, what do they call it? Painter.
Every mall had that t-shirt airbrush guy over by the food court usually, and that's where I had my first mask painted too.
No way. That's exactly what we did. They said, can you paint this? The guy was like, yeah, I think so. Yep. And they said, give me an hour and a half. My friend said, great, we'll go grab dinner. And we came back, it was done. So I that's so cool that you did the same thing, because I had never have heard of anyone else doing that.
Yep. Yeah. It was, I mean, in those days, you didn't know where they were getting painted. The pros were getting their helmets painted or anything like that. And we were at the mall. And so we just asked, and the guy's like, yeah, I've painted some helmets before, but not goalie helmets. He said, I've done a few motorcycle helmets, so I suppose it'll probably be the same. And so I told him what I wanted, and he got it pretty close to what I wanted. So that was cool.
Really?
And then of course the only other helmet I had painted, I did when I was in college. I sent that up to Canada but the internet was around back then, and I was able to do a little investigating into some better reputable mask painters.
Sleuthing, yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because I would have loved to have found Todd Miska's site at that point, because I was going to school in Minnesota and Miska's from here, and I could have sent it there instead of all the way up to Canada. But coming full circle, when Engle was starting, I reached out to David Hutchins and did a story where I got to go sit down with Miska at that point. So it was kind of one of those where it came full circle,
cool.
at least. Yeah. So that, yeah, it's at least I'm not the only one that went to the mall with his goalie mask and dropped it off to get painted.
Yeah, that's, like I said, that's so cool. And a little shout out to Hutch. He's a great guy. And
Yep.
he and what he and Kevin do at Engle. Those guys, I've been lucky to not only meet them in person, but just, I think that was one of the things in my head as I started kind of Goalie Gear Nerd. They were really, in my mind, and not to speak ill of anyone else, because a lot of people have come into the space since I started Goalie Gear Nerd, but Engle was really what I thought the only real reputable presence.
Yep.
And I thought, okay, I can do something different, a little bit different than what they're doing. But it was always, I always felt like, okay, those guys, they would do what they do really, really, really well. And I'm never going to be on that plane, but I've always been trying to be respectful of kind of what they do. And because they do, like I said, do it so well. And then Hutch and Woodley are just great guys.
Yeah. I haven't talking to Woodley, but Hutch through email. And then I had him on a few episodes ago, and he was just a delight to talk to. And I think we could probably just kept going on and on, as with him. But yeah, I've been a follower of Engle ever since they started. In fact, I was hesitant to start this podcast once they started theirs. I'm going, there it is. It's the end all be all of goalie podcasts right there. So I like to think mine's a little bit different, a little more inside the actor's studio-ish, where it's just getting to know the goalie, not just the technique and the strapping preferences, which I love to hear about. It's more of the journey, I guess you could say, and the man behind the mask.
There you go. I like that.
So,
yeah, no, you do a great job, and yeah, I think it's there's a way to do it and be respectful of them, and it's yeah, I enjoy both of your podcasts a lot.
So, you talked about that early mask. You've had a few others, along the way. What's kind of been the oddest mask that you've had?
Ooh, oddest mask I've owned. It's funny because I had an Eddie that I still have.
Oh, those were great masks.
They are. They're fantastic mask, and I had it. I used it 3 seasons AAA. It was the only piece of gear I did not upgrade throughout we went through a lot of gear, but I kept it. And then even in my 20s, late 20s, I would still, throw it on and go out there. And it was a great mask, and still in my garage. I've accumulated some more masks since then. I really like that. And I was really excited though, when I finally got a mage style, kind of the Timmy Thomas style mask.
Yeah.
I ended up getting one of those from my buddies at Otney. And I being a smaller goalie, I really like it. It's great visibility down low, but it gets a lot of looks from goalies going, what is that thing?
Yep. Yeah.
So it's fair, I always think.
When I was in college, I was wearing an Eddie mask, and I got run in a game and got a horrible concussion. The only saving grace is it was the last game before Christmas break, so I didn't miss any playing time. But I came back, and I knew one of the issues was my mask was a little too big. It didn't fit properly. So I said, I'm done with this mask. And I was home on break, and I went to Hockey Unlimited, where I had originally bought my pro mask, which was one of their hinged masks, not the normal backplate with the 5-point harness. It had the 2 hinges and then just 2 straps, but instead
like the Badger design.
Kind of. Yeah, I'll have to send you pictures of it, because I still have it in the garage. But I picked up the old Cooper bucket and the cage, and I went Hasek style, and I absolutely loved it. It was light. The field of vision was great. The range of motion, because I didn't put a dangler on. I could just I saw the ice so much better, and I loved it. And I get, like you, the looks I would get when we went into some of these other barns and playing them. In fact, that was the year we played Shattuck St. Mary's because I was playing JV, and so not every school has a JV team, so we scheduled game against Shattuck, and I remember we were going into their barn, and I don't recall if they were on the ice against us, but it was the time that Taves and Crosby were there. But if they weren't on the ice against us, they were probably watching the game. And I got some looks coming out on the ice with that thing on. Is all these cake eaters, as we like to call them in Minnesota, are coming out at Shattuck with their brand new custom equipment. And I'm like, no, here I am. This is me. And I wore that until I took a slap shot to the Cooper logo, square to the Cooper logo, cracked the helmet, gave me another mild concussion, and the coaches and parents said, no, you're going back to a mask.
Yeah, that was of course the great downfall of them. That flat forehead and the screws there and everything, but there is a very small part of me, and I know there's a whole cottage industry now of people that get those helmets and refurbish them and wear them, and there is a part of me that wants that. I want, even if it's just for my little decorations on the wall of my office.
Right.
But cause I'm like, just knowing what we know now, it's just you're tempting fate wearing it competitively. But gosh, they're so cool and they make so much sense at so many levels.
Yeah, I was playing in a tournament 2 years ago, and I pulled it out for one game just for fun because I knew the shots weren't going to be hard. They weren't going to be buzzing the tower or anything like that, but it only lasted one game. I wasn't stupid. But it's funny because when I was looking at buying a new mask a year and a half ago, it was really the technology and masks that I was looking for. I was looking at all of them. I was looking at Warwicks. I was looking at Bowers and CCMs, and even in that year and a half to where we are now, so much has changed. I settled on a Bauer, and one of the reasons is they were using a 3M tape between the layers. It's a vibration reduction tape, and this got me really excited because I was working at 3M at the time in the automotive electrification team, who was using those vibration reduction tapes for their intended purpose, keeping the electronics in our cars stable and safe. So I understood the importance of these tapes and how they would protect my head. So that was kind of fun, and that kind of sold me on the Bauer mask at the time.
That's interesting. And yeah, it's been really interesting for really the last couple of years, and I'm lucky that I get to interface with a lot of the brands directly and kind of get a little peek behind the curtain and talk to them about some things they're working on well in advance of them coming out. And the theme has been, it seems to be that every year kind of has a theme. In 2020, and this kind of product cycle has really been, a lot of the brands have really been focusing on masks, and they've had to be, the design pipeline is 18 months to 2 years on a product. So, they were I've been talking to them about that since 2018. But it's been really interesting to kind of see now this all come to reality. You see Warrior entering those space of a really competitive product. Bauer masks continue to get better. CCM masks took a huge step forward this year. And then you have the other players in the space, like, the Otnys, the sport masks, and and others. And it's been really interesting kind of seeing people are really starting to appreciate the importance of, I think you always appreciate the importance of it, but their focus has been so squarely on masks, and seeing them kind of come to market has been nice. Again, especially once again, like a small goalie like me. I mean, I take one in the teeth usually at least once a game. So it's pretty critical to have good protective masks.
Yep, and that one to the face is usually from our own teammates these days.
Typically, yeah.
It's always funny in my beer league games. The shots that I get to the head, I can usually tell when they're on accident because they usually apologize right away. But when the same guy gets me twice in a game, then I get a little perturbed. And one of the games, I even just kind of stood up and raised my arms and looked at the guys like, really? Come on now.
Yeah.
And even the ref kind of got a chuckle out of that one, But go on.
I'm the same way. I don't know. I'm the same way. A lot of times, again, being small, I know that it's gonna happen to me. And when the guys come by, I say, hey, sorry about that. I say, it's no problem. I get it. But when it's the same guy, and I had one particular skate where I think the guy got me twice and went by my ear the third time. I think I finally said something to him. Said, you're not hitting the corners. You're clearly not. So maybe you should shoot 5-hole next time.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man.
Yeah. So, I knew the player the one time, and he barely missed my head. And I looked at him and I said, hey, my head's above the crossbar. Lower it a little bit. Come on, bud.
Yeah.
Because like you, especially by today's standards, I'm not a tall goalie. I'm only 5'10". But when I get my crouch, I have a low crouch. So it does sometimes get below the crossbar. I get that. That's a risk I take. But yeah, it's always fun. So it's interesting because you talk about the opportunities you have to try out some of the newer stuff either before it's on the market or once it first gets on the market. So you've been able to try out all of these different innovations along the way. And then when you look at me and my equipment, I mean, you've seen the pictures, my stuff's 20 years old. I literally bought my pads in the 1900s at a place that's still in Chicago. They got a couple locations, Jerry's Hockey Warehouse. I went in, I saw they had the pads, they had the colors I wanted, black and white. I was like, I'm sold. Bought them off the wall. Knowing what I know today, I would never walk into a pro shop and just buy the pads off the wall. What advice do you have for young goalies as they're going into those pro shops looking at equipment? What should they keep in mind as they look at this stuff?
Yeah, and that right there is a big piece of, I think, why I started Goalie Gear Nerd, in the sense that, and where I saw the kind of the white space and opportunity out there was to try to give some more informed information out there about goalie gear. And this is something that I'm starting to be building out more on my website, and we're going to continue to kind of build it out over the beginning of next year.
Thanks for putting that out there and wasting several days of my life looking through the old catalogs. That old Cooper one with my dream set of Belfour's Reactor 5s, thanks. Rub it in.
Yeah, no, again, it's no, that was very much it's funny you mentioned that specific piece, because of my aforementioned hobby of carrying those catalogs around. I was like, I really boy, 7-year-old me would love this. And and physically having all those catalogs in my office, I'm like, I've got to put these out somewhere else. I know, because otherwise on every conference call, this is what I'm going to be doing. But to your question, again, that's what I tried to kind of create with Goalie Gear Nerd. Is the problem is you can walk into a pro shop and the 16-year-old working there is probably not a goalie, and even if he or she is a goalie, that doesn't necessarily mean that they know anything about the gear and things like that. So that's the big challenge that you try to overcome. The number one thing I always try to tell people, especially kids, because I was like this. Perhaps you weren't as impressionable as I was, but really fight that urge. Brands will kill me for saying this, but fight that urge to say, my favorite goalie wears this brand, but that's the brand I'm buying. It really is. I always say it's about aligning the gear with your personal playing style and preferences. And it's putting those together. And you have to kind of be self-aware enough to say, okay, well, given my style and my, and how I like to wear my gear, you have to identify which brand fits you, and there is enough differentiation across the brands if you can do the research to kind of understand. Okay, I really like super stiff pads. Pads are going to hold their shape forever, that are super fast and sliding. Okay, well then you're definitely going somewhere in the Bauer Supreme family. Maybe you'll go to a CCM Axis.
I tried those things on at the Let's Play Hockey Expo, and I felt like I had a 2x4 on my leg. And somebody asked me, "It's like, what do you think?" And I said, "Well, but then again, coming from the pads I have that are pillows, and I said, it's not the pad for me, but I know the goalies that would really like this pad. Like, it's going to kick those rebounds out. It's going to stay stiff." I was like, I get it. I liked the construction of it. I liked the pad. But like you said, it's not right for my style.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to say that, and again, it is about the style and purposes. The other goalie that I play against for my weekly pickup on Monday nights, he's he's probably 20 years older than I am, I think, approximately. And so his style is really different. He butterflies. He doesn't really butterfly. When he goes down, I should say, it's onto the face of the pad. He still doesn't really drop into the knee block. So I helped him when he was getting some custom leg pads, kind of figure out the specs that work for him and stuff like that. And they're dramatically different than mine. And that was our big part of our conversation, was kind of figuring kind of that out, and what works with him and for him, and what he good. And he's like, I'm never getting up leather straps. And I'm like, okay. So he's going to throw a bunch of leather straps on there, and that's fine. And I'm like, okay, just so you know, this is why they're going away, and here's the research and things like that. But if that's not where he is and his game is, so we make him pad with a bunch of straps. So it's different. And yeah, so coming where you are, I would like a CCM Access set. It would be if you had golf clubs that were 20 years old, and all of a sudden you go out and get like the lightest, like most technologically advanced ones in the store, you're going to be like, I can't swing these. Well, no kidding.
Well, that's why I'm not a huge fan of the composite goalie sticks. My first goalie stick was a Titan. Those things it was like holding a Buick. I need a little weight there.
Yes, and you would get along with my buddy perfectly, because he still has I was teasing him this week, actually. We were skating off the ice, and he forgot his stick on top of the. You wait for the Zamboni to go around. Goalies have to wait. That's our lot in life. And he forgot his stick on top of the goal. And so as I was skating off, I go, he forgot his stick. I'm going to go grab it. And I grabbed it for him, kind of walked in the locker room and went to hand it to him. I said, you forgot this. And he kind of laughed. He goes, it's pretty obvious which stick, whose stick is whose, because he's got this super heavy foam core. I gave it to him. It was an extra one that I had in my garage. And I was like, I'm never going to use this. Take it. And compared to, I think I have like the True AX9 right now. And it's nothing. The thing weighs like air. And he's like, I could never use it. And I'm like, I would break my shoulder trying to hold that thing that you're wielding around, this piece of lumber. So different strokes.
I was talking to Connor Beaupre a couple weeks back, the wild e-bug, and he was talking about how he was at a practice and he broke his stick, and I forget who it was, had just been traded or sent down or something, and a couple of his sticks were left around and they were still foam cores, and he goes, my arm got tired in that practice just using a heavier stick, where that's the kind of stick I use, and I don't even think about it.
Right.
Yeah, but it's funny because you talk about, looking at the equipment that's right for the way you play and right for the style. Don't look at the equipment that you like the way it looks, because these days you can get it to look however the heck you want with any brand.
Right.
We know that, but find what works for you. And that's what kind of scares me, is I start to think about buying a new set of equipment. It's like, I don't know if any of the modern equipment does suit my game, to be honest.
It does. It's out there. Yeah, it is. Yeah. And I know you're kidding, but I mean, it's out there, and trying to kind of. That's why I've really been putting a lot more effort into the gear reviews. This year was supposed to be a lot more robust and comprehensive. Unfortunately, COVID happened, so as a lot of my stuff was arriving in March and April, there was no sheets of ice, so that kind of delayed some of it. I'm starting to finally get final testing done with a lot of this stuff, but and that's why I've been working on kind of some other avenues to be able to say, like, okay, this pad is for this kind of goalie, and if that's your style, great. If it's not, it doesn't. And this is also a narrative that just drives you up the wall. It doesn't. If it's not for you, that doesn't mean it's a bad pad,
right?
Because you don't like the look of it, it doesn't mean it's a bad pad,
right?
It's something that's not meant for you, and there is someone out there, and it's the performance. If the performance doesn't align with you, fine. If you don't like the look, that's art, dude. That's subjective. We don't all have to like the same thing.
Yeah.
Don't. No, those comments, which are very frequent on my Instagram.
It's like a Porsche versus a Ferrari. They're both great cars. It's just, which one do you prefer? Which one works better for you? I'll take them both. I don't care.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's people that are hardcore car guys that will tell me, "Oh my gosh, BMW is a driver's car," and I'm
Yeah.
not a car guy, and I'll go, "Okay," and they tell me, and other people they'll say like, "Unless you're a real car guy, you don't appreciate it. You probably don't even like driving it," and I'm like, "Okay, well then that's definitely not not that I have the means, but nor do I probably have the desire to have that kind of experience." So but again, it doesn't make it a bad car just because it's
Right.
not for me.
No, it makes so much sense because a good friend of mine, he's a Mercedes guy, but he's
Okay.
also a pilot, so he likes to go fast, and he's got this special Mercedes that's really fast. He let me drive it once, and I don't know why. Uh, there's more buttons
Good
to
friend.
operate. Yeah, there's more buttons to operate the seat than there are in my Mitsubishi. I'll put it that way. But it's like he's like, this is the car for me. I like it because I like to drive it. He goes,
Mm-hmm.
but your Mitsubishi Outlander is the right car for you because it hauls your goalie equipment, which won't fit in my car, and
Right.
it gets you to and from scout camp with your boy.
There you go. I like
So
that.
it's like it works. It's what's right for you. He gets that, but again, we can appreciate each other's cars and know that the one in my garage is right for me. Just like we can appreciate each other's equipment, but we know what's in our bag is right for us. So let me ask you
Bingo.
this. We're both kind of from the same era. We started playing in the 90s. What do you see being the biggest innovation in goalie equipment in the time, since we were, say, in high school?
The thing I always go back to is the knee block, on the addition of the knee block on the pads, because what was so interesting about it is, it was a functional thing to help goalies, the impact on their knees and dropping, and actually then aiding in the rotation of the pads, which, it's interesting because it was an innovation to help solve a problem, but it ended up changing the position entirely. Knee blocks allowed, and shout out to Pete Smith when he was at Warrior, because he's really credited for being he was at Vaughn at the time, now with Warrior. Was really seen as the one who created the concept, but it was, it created all of these things where not only now are pads taking up more space because the faces of them are completely rotating towards the shooter, but then all of a sudden things like butterfly slides and all these other things that are really critical parts of the game technically are possible now because of that construction and that knee block. And so if you look at all the things that have happened, and composite sticks are big, and the innovations in math are huge, and things like that. But I think if you really said what's the one innovation that's changed everything the most since you and I have been playing, that's definitely it.
That makes sense because the masks have come a long way. They've made our position safer. The sticks have come a long way. They've allowed us to shoot the puck better. But the knee block has changed the way we play. You talk about the butterfly slide in my Vaughn Legacies that are a Model 2 right before that happened. I can't do that butterfly slide. So that makes complete sense. And I couldn't agree more. And it almost segues perfectly into my next question. And that, I was wondering, the position has evolved really from goalies stopping pucks to goalies blocking pucks. I was talking to Ron Tugnut recently about that. And, he said young goalies don't fear the puck like we did when we were kids. Do you see that as something that is possibly true, that maybe we've made the position so safe that we've taken some of the what am I looking for? The skill that we had to learn as young goalies to stop the puck versus just here's the technique to block it. If I do this, my chances are good. Whereas we had to, when this happens, this is what we got to do. We were more reactionary. Do you think that's just because of the equipment as much as I do? And if so, is that a good thing?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. And I think that's a true statement in the sense that goalies, I've got a 7-year-old who's starting to play in goal, and he isn't afraid of the puck, and it's really because the gear is better and because they're shooting at his age blue pucks. They're
Mm-hmm.
lighter. So he doesn't have that fear that I probably had at that time of, okay, if I catch this weird in the chest, it's gonna hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have that. Now that will come though as you get older, because pros, certainly not to the extent that it was when in our younger days, but when you get to the higher levels of hockey, you still feel that impact. You still can get hurt, and
Yep.
that's actually been something that, to your point, what has
The feel
changed,
of the
I've
puck.
found,
That's what we used to call it, is the feel of
yes,
the puck.
right. And what's interesting is working prior to Goalie Nerd and working with various brands and more public context, and still now with Goalie Gear Nerd, I get messages from who's going, I just keep getting stingers in the palm of my hand. What can I do about that? And I always say, well, what level are you playing and what's the construction of your glove? And they'll be like, I'm an 18U AAA from Minnesota. And, and I go, well, stop right there. You're going to have people that are going to have howitzers. Yeah. If you catch a puck in the palm, you're going to feel it. Right. Welcome to the position. You and I knew that at 7.
Yeah. Yeah.
At 17, they're just now realizing that.
We learned at 7 too is, if I catch the puck with the pocket, I don't feel it. But if I catch, it's just like I was explaining that to my son the other day because he's a baseball player. He's like, that one hurt my hand. I said, well, if you would have caught it properly, it wouldn't have. And he just looked at me, and I explained it to him. He goes, oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, that's 1,000% right. And it's that's kind of changed people's kind of perception of the position and how you and I kind of learned. Like, I know there was a great, I saw this great interview with Grant Fuhrer who talked about how in practice he would wear pants that didn't have a thigh protection. And his logic was, it makes my hands faster because I sure as heck don't want to get hit in the thighs. And I was like, that's really profound. So you and I growing up, we probably had fast hands. We didn't want to take a shot off the dome because it hurt. And versus now, my son and the other goalie on our team, they giggle when we hit them in the face. Yeah. And I'm like, okay. So it's just, it has definitely changed the position in that context. And I think you're right in the sense that as the game has evolved, and trying to block and create kind of these blocking surfaces, like an RVH at our age, and doing like reverse VH when we were, a young kid, not only would the pads not allow for that due to the construction, but the idea of us saying, I'm going to create a wall with my body and you can just hit it anywhere you want. You and I would have been very worried about where that puck was going to get us. Well, today they don't care.
When we were young, we still had coaches that felt we should be standing up to stop every puck. So the idea of the RVH wouldn't even fly. But I like that you bring up that piece about Grant Fuhrer, because when I was in high school, I was a senior, and my timing for my hands was just off. So the Zamboni got done early, and the coach came in the locker room and he grabbed me. He goes, all right, come on out. We're going to do some work. And I was like, all right, this is weird, because we didn't have a goalie coach at that point. We never did goalie specific work. And we get out there, and he goes, all right, stretch out. And so I stretched out, and he goes, put your mask on the net. And I go, what? And he goes, put your mask on the net. And he goes, do you trust me? I said, absolutely not. And he goes, okay, that's fair. He goes, but do you trust your hands? I said, yeah. And he just started shooting high. And I had no mask on. And you know what? Nothing hit me in the face. And like, my teammates are now lining the boards, watching through the glass. They're like, oh my God, he's going to. And that day at practice, after they all came out and I had my mask back on, like, my hands were back to where I needed to. It's just kind of that little level set of like, hey, if you don't have this in the way, you're going to pick it up. And it worked. And I still look back at that one. I didn't like that coach. He only lasted 1 year. But that was one thing he did where I was like, that was pretty good.
That's so interesting. And I've heard of tales like that. There was a similar tale, and if you find old video, there's some great old video of Mika Kiprasov in warm-ups, where you would see that part of his positioning is right before the shooter would shoot, he'd flick his hand up near his face, and they said he started doing that because he had a coach that at a young age that said, I'm gonna belay your fears about getting hit in the mask by wrapping a couple off your face, and it freaked him out. So instinctually, he would, for the rest of his career, right as the shooter would go, he'd raise his glove hand up and kind of tilt it outwards to raise a snap in front of his face. And it was something that I forgot what goalie coach said that, we know this is exactly why he does it. And it's technically, from a technical perspective, something he's not supposed to do, but it's so in his DNA from this coach. And from fear of getting hit in the face, we just let him do it, and he just does it, and it works for him. Yeah. So I mean, those things they stick with you.
But you know what? That's also good coaching, because I know USA Hockey and their 51 and 30 movement, they're trying to go with the idea of don't coach the kid to be the same as every other goalie. Coach the kid based on their abilities, and that's where the coach looked at Kiprusoff and said, this is what you're doing. Rather than break you of that habit, how do we make you with that habit better? So that's just a fantastic coach right there.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to get them to work with the habit than it is to break the habit. As a parent, we all know that.
Amen. How do we integrate this in a way versus breaking it and
make it seem fun.
Exactly. Or if you're again like me and your son is on the team, realizing it doesn't matter what I say, I'm still just dad. He's not going to listen. So how can I get another coach to tell him this?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because as I mentioned, my son's a Boy Scout, and there's 2 dads on there where they know their kids aren't going to listen to him. So they have this understanding where when we go to scouting events, it's almost like that kid isn't mine anymore. He's yours. So if you see him doing something wrong, you talk to him, because he'll listen to you, but he won't listen to me. And it's worked out very well for those two going that route. And when you're coaching, you almost have to do the same thing. I was coaching baseball with another dad, and we did the same thing with our boys. It's like, okay, I'm seeing this with my kid. Can you go talk to him? Absolutely. Because he'll say the same thing I'm going to say to him, but he's going to listen to him.
No, I have that understanding with, I'm fortunate that for my son's 8U team, one of the assistant coaches is a goalie. So I tell him, hey, I want you to go work with them. And so he works with him on a goalie side. He does a great job with it. I think he's like, Dad's going to tell me all this at home, or it's stick and puck. So it's nice to have another coach to kind of whisper in his ear.
Yeah. So, you talk about your little guy, and we were talking earlier, he's in Cub Scouts and everything. One of the things I'm trying to do with the podcast is find out a little more about, the goalie behind the mask. When you're not immersed in social media, going over all the different photos coming out of new equipment and whatnot, what is the life of the goalie gear nerd like away from the rink?
It's busy. I am very much one of those people that tends to have his hands in a lot of different things.
Yeah.
I am a parent. I've got two little guys. So they have their own things. Obviously with COVID, it's all been, subject to change, and school has been, virtual and then in person and all that good jazz. So obviously doing a lot of that. And I tend to be involved in a lot of different things. I'm heavily involved in several other kind of organizations. And then really also from the goalie gear nerd side, there is a lot of kind of daily chatter and talking to the brands themselves and see what they're doing. And kind of being a sounding board for them sometimes, and sometimes for companies that are just kind of want to hear, getting my 2 cents, and just one of many opinions I'm sure they're getting about kind of, a certain topic and stuff like that. And then, again, it's a pretty busy, I'm one of those people that has to create an enormous task list the night before, prioritize, kind of really broken out, because there's not enough hours in the day perpetually. And then it would be nice to see my wife and, get to talk to her and things like that. So, that's usually it's a sprint from beginning to end.
Well, you mentioned, just the goalie gear nerd content. I work in marketing, and so content planning, all of that is my life. And I'm always amazed at how much you put out. It's just incredible. I mean, this is this your full-time job? I can't imagine you do something else with the amount of time you spend on this. It's amazing.
No. This is not my full-time gig. It is.
It seems like it sometimes, though, right?
It definitely does. It definitely feels like, and it is undeniably, it started as and it remains a passion project.
Yeah.
And that's what I always keep saying. And it really started, the genesis at the beginning, it was really just kind of a brain dump. And with the idea of, again, of kind of hopefully putting out some more insightful information. Honestly, my thinking at the time was, if I have 500 followers on Instagram by the end of the first year, man, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
And not really kind of fully appreciating the fact that people kind of share this passion and this interest, and then also not realizing quickly how willing and the big brands, they almost reached out almost immediately and said, hey, kind of dig what you're doing. And I think them seeing me as a third party sounding board for some stuff, they could say, what do you think about this? That's been probably one of the biggest surprises and really the most fulfilling part. But yes, I do have other employment. I do have other day job that I am doing in between everything else.
Yeah. And I mean, with this podcast, my day job is I'm an analyst for, a marketing team. So it's like, that's my 8 hours that I put in. And then I find time to talk to folks like yourself. And then after that, it's like, I gotta fit time in to do the editing and that kind of stuff. But my wife and kids, they're great about it. They support it. And so that helps.
Yeah. Having a core, team and my, and my wife, we've been together for a very, very long time. And she kind of has always known this part of my personality. And and to her credit, I can usually rattle off a pro and she can tell me what brand they're in because it has to be around this so much. And then, I think knowing that we're raising two hopefully little gear nerds, I know my 7-year-old is starting to be, it's just, you have to have that family support and structure. But yeah, at the end of the night, I'm very glad to sit on the couch with her and, watch something on Netflix and kind of just, okay, let's just phone away for a little bit and just kind of relax.
So I have to imagine you're probably using some marketing software to pre-plan some of your content going out, because it seems like you got it going out at all hours of the day.
Oh, you give me way too much credit. The answer is an unequivocal no. No, I don't. It is one ear to the ground all the time, and it is, and also my understanding kind of with the brands and things like that, and as to any time. And I will say, I think part of the content volume, a big part of it, and the credit has to go to them, is this kind of, I don't know if Engle coined the term, but I certainly a term that I think applies, the goalie union.
Yep.
And a lot of my content, I don't have the percentages, but a lot of my content is stuff that is sourced to me from followers. So some person in Sweden at, what is 2 a.m. my time and noon or whatever in Sweden, it goes, oh, hey, look, Linus Ullmark is got a new set of gear and he's practicing in the off season.
Yep.
I'm gonna send a picture of this to Goalie Gear Nerd. So it's nice that I don't have to self-source everything.
Yeah.
So then I'll get that message and go, oh gosh, as I'm brushing my teeth to go to bed or something, and go, oh gosh, I got to put this out there. That's been extremely helpful in kind of managing some of that.
Yeah. So let me ask this, as you look forward, I mean, you've launched the website this year, which, like you said, thanks for ruining several days. What are the long-term plans for Goalie Gear Nerd? Is it just kind of business as usual? Keep putting out content, keep the website going. And, I know you've had some great COVID masks out there. You've got the Cheevers one up right now again. What are the long-term plans there?
So I continue to expand into other areas. I kind of set certain phases of Goalie Gear, and once I kind of saw that, okay, this is something that people enjoy, I kind of set up several phases in my mind. First phase being really just establishing a presence in a brand, Instagram and Twitter.
Yep.
Done that pretty well at this point, I think. Second was setting up thank you. Setting up the website, because I felt like there was content specific to that just fit a website more, and I don't think I've fully leveraged it because, again, it was launched in COVID, everything like that. I don't think I've fully have really leaned into the site to the degree that I would like. So I really want to continue to build that out. And then also there's a phase 3, which I'm looking to launch early next year, which I don't want to tip my hand too much because I tend to have, I find, and it's flattering, but a lot of people tend to kind of mirror what I'm doing after I start doing it.
Yep.
So,
I know some of those brands that do that. So, yeah.
So first quarter of next year, looking to kind of launch the next phase. It's not a podcast. I'm sorry. Although I, like you, thought about doing a podcast and even did like a little mock version of it in my car and sent it to a couple of people in the industry, and they're like, "No, that's pretty interesting." And I think Engle came out very quickly after that, and I was like, "Okay, no, put more focus on the website. You do a great job because yours is very distinct and unique, and mine, I was like, mine sounds just like that." So I'm just gonna not do it.
Hey,
so
when I talked to Hutch, he said if there's any ideas I have, maybe they have the corner with Cam from the Hockey Shop. Maybe they need some time with the goalie gear nerd.
And I've been on their podcast. It was, once for at least, I think the one time to do a little preview of 2020. And again, I've gotten to know those guys a lot over a couple of years, and they're just great dudes. They really, really, really are.
Yeah. So, you've listened to some of the podcasts. You know that I like to end each one with a series of rapid fire questions. You've probably heard them, so you've probably had a chance to think of some answers. So what's the craziest coaching moment from your playing days?
So the craziest moment was, and you mentioned it earlier, I had a coach that didn't want my goalie partner and I to go down. And so we went up to, I think we were playing CompuWare in Detroit, and their team was just stacked, and they were obliterating us. I don't know what the score was, but if the game didn't end in double digits, I'd be surprised. But what he was doing to try to drill into our heads that we should not go down, drop on our knees for saves. When CompuWare scored, he'd yank the goalie and flip the other partner in. And so literally it was, and the message he was trying to send to us completely demoralized the team. So they started scoring every couple of minutes, and we were going back and forth.
Oh my goodness.
And it was absolutely humiliating. I actually thought about quitting hockey that day. My parents weren't with me that trip. But one of the parents kind of said, "Hey, no, stick it out through the rest of the season." And when the just kind of talked to me and said the same thing. And it was absolutely, that was, I think, definitely my low point, and kind of low point. And honestly, a part of the impetus why when my oldest started getting into hockey, I needed a coach because I wanted to control that narrative and to ensure that those kinds of moments never happen.
Yep, absolutely. So what is your all-time favorite goalie mask?
Oh, gosh. It's tough. It never was a kid. I was never I knew of Jerry Cheever's mask. And I don't think that I really, and I was like, that's a cool concept. And it kind of was, I think, is arguably the most iconic mask. But now, again, having kids, like we did our pumpkin this year as a Jerry Cheever's pumpkin. And my boys were referring to the pumpkin as Cheevers. And I've got to know Jerry a little bit, working with him with a COVID mask, because I wasn't going to do it without his blessing. And he was very sweet about it and gave me his signature to put on it and things like that. He sent me one of his little masks and stuff like that. He's a real great guy. So I will say from now, I will say also, I've said before, I loved as a kid, Cujo's trumpet and scroll blues mask, the pre-Cujo.
The original. When I think of Cujo as a 90s Hawks fan, when I think Cujo, I think of that mask too. And because of that, that is a mask I also hate, because I was a Belfour fan. And I remember him beating the Hawks in the playoffs, and I couldn't stand Cujo for many years. I've gotten over it. Now I have a affection for the guy after reading his book. He's really something else. But yeah, it's a beautiful mask, absolutely beautiful mask, but I can't stand it.
Yeah, I had the same feeling about Eddie Belfour's mask at the time. I was like, that's cool, but
Yeah,
grr.
yeah. So
Not
the feeling's
like
mutual.
Yeah.
uh, so a fun story. A good friend of ours is from Collinsville, Illinois, which is just over the river from St. Louis, and his daughter was a huge Curtis Joseph fan, and I was a squirt at the time, and my name's Joseph, and so it was going to be her 16th birthday, and my dad said, well, tell your daughter we'll get her an autographed Joseph card for her birthday. So she goes around telling all of her friends she's getting an autographed Cujo card. And then at her 16th birthday party, her dad hands her my autograph, player card from picture day. And she just looks at him red face and she goes, real funny. But, 30 years later, she still has the darn thing.
See,
yeah.
There you go. And I only now, thanks to the podcast, only appreciating and value, no doubt.
Yes, it's probably worth a penny now. What's your favorite rink that you've played at? When you think of it, it's just like, yeah, that's the best place.
Oh gosh, there were some really great ones that almost like converted churches up in Detroit or Windsor. I think I was really lucky to get to play in the Pee Quebec tournament as a kid, and doing that was just unreal. And I think that it was just I think for playing in a rink. That was probably the pinnacle. You felt like a pro.
Yep.
And that has a huge soft spot in my heart.
That wasn't the year Ryan Whitney from Spittin' Chicklets won it, was it? I
No,
mean, we hear about it every episode.
Perpetually hearing about that, but no, it was. I think I was a couple years before him. With the 93, all I have to do is listen to Chicklets for 20 seconds and I'll hear it again. But no, I was, I think, a couple of years before him.
Yes, that's great. So what's and I was actually looking forward to asking you this one because you'll have a reason behind it. I know it. What's the favorite stick you've ever used?
And I didn't plan answers for this. That's why you're hearing me think, and that's good.
I like it. That's what I want.
Yeah. I try not to prepare too much, which is probably not a good thing. I would probably say two really stick out at me. I love those Cohos, the Felix Potvin Cohos.
Yeah. Used some
Jocelyn
of them in college.
Tebow. Yeah. In fact, I had a Jocelyn Tebow Coho, and I loved Tebow for some reason as a kid. Like I actually got to work one of the NHL drafts as a runner when it was in town, and I chose to work for the Canadiens because I loved Tebow so much. And team colors did not have a speck of red in them, and I still had a Tebow Coho stick. So I love that would probably be the best. The second I own is the year, a couple years prior to that, I had gotten some Sherwood, and I don't remember the model number. If you ask Mike McKenna, he can name every Sherwood model of all time. But I didn't get a chance when I got it. I think my dad cut it down, put a knob on it really quickly, and I didn't have time to tape the blade. And I know Tommy Soderstrom. Soderstrom?
Yeah.
That didn't tape the blade of his stick. So I was like, I'm doing that, and I did it all season, and there was something to it. I had a really good season, so I always kind of look back at pictures of that and go, "What the little maniac?" Well, he looks good with his little Warwick mask, but he has no tape stick. Like, what kind of gear style is that?
So I love that you mentioned Soderstrom because he's kind of one of those weird goalies that most don't remember. But he had that goofy Jofa bucket with the crazy cage. And I remember watching a game and the commentators mentioned how he backs all the way into the net when the play is at the other end. And the reason he did that is he could feel that upright in the middle of the net on his spine. And that's how he knew when he came out, he was in a good position to start with. And ever since that day, I've done the same thing.
I still do it for that exact reason. We must have watched the same game. And I am in the process of teaching one of my AU goalies, not my son, the other guy who tends to really drift out high, and then when he's coming back, he's completely off his angle. I'm trying to teach him, be a little bit further back, do the butt bump and then come out, because and I still do that a couple times each skate, because I find myself not being a big guy and being angles are critical for me. I'm like, I got to make sure that I'm dialed in here. That is too funny. I've never heard anybody else refer to that.
It had to have been an ESPN game with Gary Thorne that we were watching.
Yeah.
But if you watch any of my beer league highlights, you'll probably see me coming out from that center point of the net, because every time the puck's at the other end, I just retreat into the net like that. That's crazy. I think I know the answer, because you alluded to it already, but what's your favorite youth hockey memory?
I would say probably it's definitely the Pee Wee tournament. I think I think as goalies, because so much on our shoulders, we have that opportunity to, the goat or the hero, or the goat, or not the goat in that sense, but we're either the hero or the villain quite often. And there's, I was fortunate. There's a few examples in my head of games where we went into a game really not thinking there was any chance we were going to win, and won. And I felt like I had a bit of a hand in it. Yeah. And I was really lucky that in the Pee Wee tournament, we were in that position, did not have any expectation of winning at all. We won our first game. It wasn't, not a lot was asked of me, but I think I had like a shutout going until like the last 2 minutes, and then they scored and we won 3-1. And we thought we'd won the Stanley Cup. We had no ambitions of actually winning in turning, and went on to the second game and lost 1-0, sadly. But I think those memories right there were so incredible, and something that I really cherish. I still have my little Pee Wee ring from the championships. It's still in my office, and that's definitely the fondest memory.
That's awesome. What's the best chirp you've heard on the ice?
Oh God! I'm honestly. I can't think of one off the top of my head, because again, I didn't prep for this. I will say I am very much someone who doesn't chirp because I'm so bad at it. I've realized very early on that my attempts were completely pathetic, and I am very much one of those people that 3 minutes later I think, oh my gosh, I should have said that. That would have been so good. So I'm usually the one that is kind of, laughing and poking fun at people in the most benign sense possible.
Yep.
Chirping, no. And I'm also someone that I'm usually having a really, I'm trying to have a good time. So even the random chirps, I don't engage in too much. I will say there was one of my beer league games. There was, and unfortunately my wife came to it with our kids. Some guy poked me, and he swung at one of my teammates, and he kind of swung at me, and I took a swing at him. It was a beer league, just, whatever. And
yeah.
The guy jumped up and said, I want to see you in the parking lot after this, and blah, blah, blah. And I knew a little bit about the guy. I was like, dude, you're a CPA, and we all have to go to work tomorrow. I'm not meeting you in the parking lot. And we all kind of looked at each other like, this is insane. We're all adults. My wife and kids are terrified right now.
Yeah.
But that was the closest to a chirp as I've ever gotten.
I liked when I was talking to Hutch. He said his boy was at a goalie clinic, and the one coach looked at him and said, "You must be really good at dodgeball." It's like, oh, that's good on so many levels. So what's the worst post-game beer you've had then?
I'm so dehydrated after the games. I usually need a little bit of time. I will say, the PBR, I don't understand people's obsession with PBR. I'm a beer guy. I love beer. PBR, every time it kind of, hey, we got a PBR. Here's one. I'm like, I don't get it, guys. People live and breathe by this stuff, and it just seems disgusting. And that's not any kind of I'm not saying that Budweiser's the greatest beer, in the world because I'm from St. Louis. But PBR, I don't get it. I just don't get it.
I'm with you. I think it's definitely overrated. Up here in Minnesota, Mick Golden Light is a really big popular beer. It's like one of the only places you can get it too. So that's a staple in our locker room, and that's not bad post game. And Coors Light's always a big one too. And it's like, all right, that's good. But every now and then, one of the younger guys will bring Bush Light, and all of us are like, really? Come on.
No, dude.
Yeah,
At least it's not Natty Light. Natural Light is. I at least in college, I could say, okay,
right. It fit the budget.
So be it. It fits the budget, exactly right. Nowadays, I'm like, no, we gotta have some level of quality here, boys.
Like, I appreciate a good beer, and it's always weird because when you say that, it's like I'm not an alcoholic. Like when I have a beer, it's one or two because I like the taste, not because I'm trying to get drunk. So when I bring beer for the team, I like to select some. I've had to taper myself because I would try and find a nice craft beer, but it's like I'm not going to spend the money on these guys that aren't going to appreciate it. So I look for the happy medium, and I bring them a nicer beer, in part because they don't make me pay ice fees. It's like the least I can do is bring you a good beer. So whenever I bring the beer, and there's a few of the guys on the team that are like me, they like, a good beer. They're like, ooh, we know we got something good after the game, but definitely not going to have a pregame beer out of your cooler because that'll be too heavy.
Agreed. Yes. Yeah. No, I'm like you, and also I'm the one that says, okay, I gotta hydrate for about 20 minutes. Now I can enjoy it. So yeah.
I had somebody offer me a stout for a pregame beer, and I was like, no, I plan on playing all 3 periods here, fellas.
Yeah. I had a similar experience. Well, not similar, but I there was an outdoor tournament, and took part in that, and the guy that runs it also has a microbrewery. So we won our first game.
Oh, is that the Center Ice group?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So they said, okay, your next game is tonight in like 6 hours. So we said, well, let's just go to his brewery, and we sat there at the bar for a couple of hours, and then came out, and I was like, I thought in my logic, I'll just chug a Red Bull, and that'll completely mitigate everything that's happened, and I was very wrong. It was an absolute bloodbath, and I went, well, okay, all right.
I played in a tournament 2 years ago. It's one that every year except this year because of COVID, it's through a group called Soda Stick. They have some great hockey themed stuff. I know Landon well. He actually did our jerseys, but it's to benefit the Hendrickson Foundation, and so. Mick Golden actually started donating beer. So everybody has beer in the locker room after every game. You get a case of beer for your team, which is great. But the first year, we made it to the championship game. And there was like a 5-hour span between the game and the championship game. So we were playing the team sponsored by the brewery. And I'm thinking, this is great. The brewery's across the street. They're all going to come back to our game, a little tipsy.
Yep.
No, they all came back sober, and my whole team came back tipsy. And like I paced myself so that I was just fine. And I'm like, great. I'm going to see a lot of shots here this afternoon. And we didn't win the game, but we had fun. And at the end of the day, we raised a decent amount of money for the Hendrickson Foundation, which is why we were there. So that was the best part. But it was funny. I'm looking around, going through the handshake line, and like not one of you is glassy-eyed. What is going on here?
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah, you do that once or twice, and you realize, okay, well, if it's for charity, so that's fine. There's really no, so be it. But yeah, it's does not create an optimal performance for sure.
No, I liked the one guy walked in the locker room, and he just had his head down. He goes, "Sorry, boys, I let you down," and he just like stumbled to his spot on the bench and started getting ready.
That's hilarious.
So moving on, when you tape your stick, do you go heel to toe or toe to heel?
I'm a heel to toe guy.
Okay, most goalies are. I've talked to a few that are not. They go toe to heel, and the only one that has had a reason for that has been Connor Beaupre again, and he likes to play the puck a lot, and he feels the puck comes off the tape better when he does it toe to heel. That was a little nugget when he said it. I was like, I know somebody that's gonna latch onto that one.
Yeah, that's it. My only rationale is I go all the way to the toe and really like a nice crisp, taped up around the entire toe. So you have to have that excess at the end.
Yeah,
got to fold it and then cut it, because I am that guy that owns those, $5 Howie yellow scissors specifically for that. And so that's my only rationale, is in order to get that really crisp, tight toe, I got to have that extra slack at the end.
So my rationale is, being a fan of Belfour, he used to tape it up past the heel. So when I started taping my stick, I did the same thing. And that heel, making that transition, it was real easy to mess it up. And it was easier to restart if I started at the heel than if I started at the toe and mess up at the end. And well, now I've got it down to a science, and I just keep going the way I've always gone.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So favorite number to wear when you're playing?
33, Patrick Waugh. I posted about a couple days ago, someone asked, I think it was Everything Hockey or something, what's the greatest number? Greatest player who ever wears 33, it's St. Patrick.
Yeah. See, no, I wore 33 for a while in college, so I tend to argue that one. I think I am. But we won't get into that battle tonight. For those listening, we're recording the day after the election, so there's enough arguments going on. We don't need to get into this one.
Amen.
Yeah. Last question, what advice do you have for young goalies?
I would say just, and it sounds trite, but it's true, that you continue just to love the sport. Don't be thinking about where you're going to play and how long. And I get those messages a lot about, kids that are really worried about where they'll be in a couple of years and all that stuff. And I was a kid that was in a pipeline that I've had teammates that went on to play pro, teammates that went on to play in the NHL. And there was a time that was my entire universe too. And as I kind of talked about that previous experience, I kind of really started falling out of love with hockey, when I had that coach that was pulling us constantly and stuff. And, just try to enjoy the game and continue to just, be a part of it. And if you need to take a break from it, come back to it quickly and you'll be glad you did. But yeah, like I said, one that's just always smiling when I get out on the ice. I'm having fun all the time. When I'm on my way home from the rink, after shinny, I'll call my wife and she'll ask how it went. And even say I got lit tonight, but I played hockey, and it feels very full to have that and just enjoy the game for what it is.
Badger Bob Johnson, it's a great day for hockey. Doesn't matter what day it is, and I think that's what I've appreciated most about transitioning to the beer league, because I was fortunate. I made it to college hockey. I was a JV D3 backup, but I still made it. And so there was a competitive side to me throughout all of that. And I loved every single minute of it. So that first year of beer league hockey was a little different for me, where I was like, wait a minute, everybody's not going all the way to the whistle. People aren't back checking what's going on. But once I kind of took the serenity prayer advice of, control the things I can, I was like, I'm still playing the game I love. I'm still getting that locker room experience. I'm still around these people. It's like, you remember why you love the game, and it makes it so much more enjoyable. In fact, there's a group I skate with called For the Love of Puck, and they're actually doing a documentary on just that, people that still play in the game simply because they love it. Why do they love it? And it's great. So, well, I have
and I think that's great. And I think, I was going to say the mental transition that I've had, and we can leave it here, but I've gone for, the 16-year-old version of me would leave the rink thinking about the goal that I let up and how could I let that go up or that goal. Now, much older, I leave and I go, I think about that one save that I made.
Yes.
And that's where it's the difference of, when you play golf and you're upset about the shots you didn't make, or you think about that one and you just kind of, just relish that. That's been the mental transition for me. And I'm like, that's what I'm going to think about tonight and really kind of enjoy. And I encourage anybody to kind of, when you can get into that headspace, that's where you need to be.
Well, and because I put the GoPro up behind my net, there's even some goals I let in where I'm driving home going, I wonder if that'll make the highlight video. Was it good enough? Was my effort there? Because there was one I made about this time last year where I was out of the play and I just rolled over and, Hasek style, but put my paddle on the goal line and stopped the puck. And it was like,
nice,
fantastic save. But I had no back checkers, and another guy came and was able to put it in. But it was like, okay, I'm pretty excited about that one because I gave him an opportunity he shouldn't have had in the first place. You
right.
know?
Right.
So it's, it is just the way you look at it. Absolutely. So I've taken up a ton more of your time than I intended. So I thank you for being gracious with your time. I hope listeners enjoy it. And I have a feeling this isn't the last time we're going to speak.
Well, I hope not. I've really enjoyed it as well. And again, enjoy your interest in kind of what I'm doing. And, like I said, we're all part of the goalie union, and it's always good to talk to, a fellow brother.
Absolutely. Well, you enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll be in touch, my friend. Goalie Gear Nerd and I could have kept talking for hours, and we did agree to continue the conversation on future episodes. When I finally pull the trigger to order new equipment, I know I'll be consulting with him to dial in specs that are conducive to my playing style and preferences. You can find Goalie Gear Nerd on Twitter and Instagram at Goalie Gear Nerd, all one word, no spaces or underscores. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube simply by searching Washed Up Goalie. Visit washedupgoalie.com for some great hockey-related content, my beer league hockey video highlights when I'm not injured with a bad back, and all podcast episodes. If you want some Washed Up Goalie or Tendy Talk apparel, be sure to click the shop link on my website. I need to give a big shout out to the hockey band The Zambonis for allowing me to use their music on my intros and close out all my episodes. You can download their music on iTunes, listen to them on Amazon Music, or wherever you stream your music from. I'm working on lining up other goalies to talk to as well. If you're a goalie or have connections to a goalie who I should talk to, shoot me an email at washedupgoalie39@gmail.com or send me a DM on social media. Let's not forget, if you're a brand who wants to sponsor the show, be sure to reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk. And finally, if you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe, rate, and comment on the podcast platform you're listening on. It's a quick action on your part that helps others find Tendy Talk. Until next time, keep your stick on the ice and your body square to the puck.
Hey, Craig McTavish, you gotta